It's Isaac, and here are 5 climbers who died on Mount Everest in 5 different years. All of them had money, all of them had followers, and all of them believed the mountain owed them something. I know that sounds harsh, but I genuinely don't know what other word fits. It was April 18, 2019, on the Nepal side of Mount Everest at 17,598 feet, where the air above a certain elevation doesn't feel like cold, it feels like pressure distributed against every exposed surface of your body. Brielle Mortensen had been there for 11 days and hadn't yet reached the elevation she needed for the content she came to get. She never would. Brielle was 28, a wellness and fitness influencer from Scottsdale, Arizona, with 156,000 followers watching her post gym selfies and motivational captions about limiting beliefs. Her sponsor was an electrolyte drink company. The brand launch was locked to a summit deadline, May 15th. If she didn't summit by then, the deal fell apart. She told herself the deadline was fuel. It was actually a death sentence. She didn't know it yet. Her resume was thin. Kilimanjaro, Elbrus, Aconcagua, all guided, all managed by outfitters who build safety like it's infrastructure. What she didn't mention publicly was how badly her body had struggled at every high camp. What she posted was the summit photos from her phone. Ferba Sherpa was 34. He'd summited Everest 5 times. He had 15 years of high-altitude work. His daughter was 6 years old and attended an English medium school in Kathmandu, the kind that costs money he only earned during climbing season. He'd calculated every expedition like an equation. This one was supposed to be simple. 6 more years of work, then he'd retire. From the moment Brielle arrived at base camp, Ferba saw the type. The ones with sponsors were always tighter than the ones climbing for themselves. When she started talking about her May 15th deadline, during the acclimatization brief, he noted it. When she posted photos from Camp 1 before acclimatization was even finished, the pressure shifted. The first rotation to Camp 2 went badly. Her body swelled slightly mild edema in her fingers. By Camp 2, at 21,000 feet, her pace dropped by 40%. Ferba watched her move like a metronome slowing down, and he knew she couldn't handle what came next. What she did was post a selfie with the caption, "Higher than my doubters can dream." The expedition leader brushed it off. The company had already collected the deposit. Refunding now meant money spent on permits and Sherpa wages already gone. Ferba raised the concern again. The leader nodded and said nothing. Brielle's behavior escalated. She filmed at every camp transition. She'd stop to adjust her phone's angle while the rope team waited. She took 3 versions of the same photo at different exposures, trying to nail the lighting. Ferba watched and said nothing. He'd learned. That confrontation at base camp never changed behavior at 23,000 feet. The mountain was the only argument that ever won. The summit push briefing came on May 3rd. Turnaround protocol was 1 p.m. Anyone past turnaround had to descend, period. This is mountaineering arithmetic. You have fixed hours of daylight, fixed calories, fixed oxygen. Ferba and Brielle left Camp 4 at 11:47 p.m. on May 10th. By dawn, they were at the south summit. She stopped to film a sunrise video. The clock was already starting to lie. She reached the summit at 12:34 p.m., 26 minutes past turnaround. Ferba looked at her and said one sentence, "We descend now," she said. 5 more minutes for photos. She took 40 minutes of photos. The weather was still clear, so the mind uses that as evidence that danger isn't real. But the mountain doesn't operate on what you see. It operates on what's coming. By the time they started descending, it was 1:14 p.m. At 2:47 p.m., approximately 200 meters above the south, Colonel, the serac broke. A serac is a block of ice sometimes 30 feet, sometimes 100 feet. This one had been holding for 17 days. Today, the sun angle was wrong, or the wind stress was right, or the physics simply changed. Seracs don't announce themselves. The sound arrives after the movement. A climber 40 meters below described what he saw. The ice came straight down, not a slide, a collapse. The whole thing disintegrated into maybe 20 large chunks and 1,000 pieces of shrapnel. It spread across the whole route. Ferba was still 5 meters above Brielle. He was clipped into the fixed line. The serac hit him across the left leg and left side of his body. His femur fractured with a sound the climber below also heard. He fell. The rope held him. Brielle was struck by secondary debris and knocked into a small crevasse offset from the main line. She fell 8 feet and stopped against ice walls. She was conscious. Her legs moved, but she was trapped, and when the adrenaline wore off, her hands were already starting to numb. The system doesn't pause for rescue. It does math. Tenzin Lama, the climber below, was now the rope leader. He could go down to Brielle, she was closer, maybe savable. Or he could stay with Ferba, stabilize him, and wait for other climbers to come down and form a rescue chain. If Tenzin left Ferba alone, alone, Furba might die from shock. If Tenzin went to Brielle, she might also die, and then Furba would definitely die. Tenzin made the decision that defined his next 20 years. He stayed with Furba. They got Furba down. They looked down at where Brielle was trapped. The crevasse was narrow. The walls were ice. Any attempt to rappel would risk losing the rescue climber too, and they were running out of daylight. Tenzin stayed. Furba was lowered. Brielle stayed in the crevasse as the sun moved across the sky. She was conscious through the evening. Climbers above tried calling down to her. By morning, she was still, and her body temperature had stopped registering. Furba survived. His femur healed, but his climbing career ended at 34. The medical bills, the rehabilitation, his insurance barely covered it. His daughter's school tuition went unpaid for 6 months. His wife took a job in a hotel kitchen in Pokhara. The thing he'd calculated so carefully, 6 more years, then retirement had been deleted in the 8 seconds it took a Serac to fall. The mountain didn't distinguish between her choices and his loss. Now the next story isn't about a climber who made one catastrophic mistake. It's about someone who built an entire identity on a lie, and when the mountain tested that lie, there was nobody home to answer. It was May 3rd, 2021, on the Nepal side of Mount Everest, where the weather window that opens in spring closes the moment it wants to, and nobody can argue with it. Mason Reinhold came from Park City, Utah. He was 31. He'd sold a Techstar up in 2018 and decided that what he actually wanted was to explore. He called it that in interviews. What he meant was climbing mountains and posting about it, building a personal brand around altitude mindset and pushing limits. His resume was thin, an EBC track, low bush, guided Cho Oyu. What he didn't mention was that he'd attempted Everest before in 2019 and had turned around at 24,000 feet. He was carrying that failure like an extra oxygen bottle, rebranded as a learning experience. He'd started telling people he had summited Everest. He hadn't. Not once. Pemba Tamang was 38. He'd been guiding for 18 years, 8 summits. He was also newly married 2 months, in fact. The apartment they'd bought in Kathmandu wasn't paid for yet. The marriage felt fragile in the way new marriages do, and this season's earnings were supposed to solidify it. From base camp onward, Mason treated the mountain like it owed him something. He moved fast during acclimatization because he carried the ego of someone who'd already been here in his mind. He challenged Pemba's pacing calls. He clipped into the fixed rope, carelessly sometimes without checking the carabiner, sometimes with an inverted gait. Pemba raised this with the expedition leader. He moves too fast, he doesn't check his clips. The leader listened. The leader had collected Mason's deposit, and Mason had already booked another expedition for September. The leader said he'd talk to him. He didn't, or he did, and Mason didn't hear it, heard it, and didn't care. By May 1st, the weather window opened. Climb now or wait another week. At 11:42 p.m. on May 2nd, Mason and Pemba and 3 other climbers left Camp 4 for the summit. Mason and Pemba reached the summit at 12:47 p.m. He spent 40 minutes filming. When it came time to descend, he moved fast too fast. Pemba called for him to slow. Mason said he was fine. At 1:23 p.m., they were descending from the south summit, moving toward the south col. The snow was wet May sun had been. Intense, and the bridges were getting thinner. The hazard brief had mentioned this. Crevasse fields are at peak danger from 1 p.m. onward. Don't trust the snow bridges. Mason wasn't afraid. He'd been this high before. He knew how to move. He had the certainty of someone who'd never actually been here. At 1:47 p.m., his foot went through. The crevasse was maybe 6 feet wide. The bridge had held maybe 200 climbers that season. Today, it held 1 less. He fell, and the rope came taut. Pemba was. The anchor above, then the carabiner failed. Not from the impact it failed, because Mason had clipped it inverted, and the gate had opened on the shock load. Pemba felt the rope go slack. He heard Mason cry out once, then nothing. A climber above Pemba couldn't see into the crevasse. Nobody could. Pemba rappelled down 15 feet and looked. Nothing but ice and darkness. He keyed the radio. Climber has fallen. Crevasse entry, no contact. The rescue chain took 40 minutes to form. By the time the first additional climber was rappelling in, it was 2:30 p.m. They descended maybe 30 feet. They saw rope, a jacket. They didn't see Mason. The next morning, they found him 40 feet down, wedged in a narrows, dead for approximately 14 hours. The expedition company investigated. Their report noted, climber's carabiner showed improper clipping, inverted gait documented. Climber responsible for own safety checks. What they didn't note was that Mason had moved recklessly, that Pemba had called for a slower pace, that Mason had dismissed every warning. Pemba's first thought when the rope went slack was, I'm going to be blamed for this. His second thought was, my wife. Pemba continued guiding. But something had changed. When he looked at other clients, he saw the carabiner that had opened. He knew that Mason had been carrying the failure forward, the lie about past summits, the dismissal of guidance, the certainty that the mountain couldn't touch him. The lie had gotten him killed, and had gotten Pemba 15 minutes of terror he'd carry for life. 3 years before Mason, there was a climber who made a different kind of mistake. She wasn't lying about her experience. She was just convinced that sharing the moment mattered more than protecting it. It was April 25, 2018, on Mount Everest Northeast Ridge at 28,000 feet, where the air is thin enough that every decision moves slowly and every consequence arrives fast. Cassidy Whitmore was 26. From Boulder, Colorado, though she'd lived in Los Angeles building a TikTok presence, 234,000 followers. Her brand was Limits or Lies. The sponsor was a boutique adventure apparel company. They wanted her to climb the mountain, film it, and post real-time via satellite and fiber. What nobody told her, because it was implicit, is that real-time posting from 21,000 feet requires dividing your attention between staying alive and staying relevant. For Cassidy, those things had stopped being compatible somewhere. Around Camp 2, Pasang Sherpa was 31. 13 years of guiding, 5 8,000-meter summits. His 6-year-old son was born with a cleft palate. The surgery was scheduled for August in Kathmandu, a private clinic. Good reputation, high cost. Pasang's wife had asked him directly, "How many more expeditions until we can afford it?" He'd done the math. This expedition was number 4. One more good season and his son could get fixed. From base camp onward, Cassidy was filming. The landscape, the tents, the Sherpa porters. Every moment was potential content. The problem is that climbing Everest requires minute-by-minute presence. The mountain doesn't pause for brule. During the rotation to Camp 1, Pasang watched her stop to frame a shot of the Khumbu icefall. Standing on the rope, one hand on the line, the other on her phone, trying to get the angle right. A climber positioned above described seeing her standing on a suspect section of bridge, immobile, filming, for maybe 4 minutes. Pasang moved her bodily off the unstable ground. She laughed and said, "Did you see that shot? At Camp 2, she set up a filming station. 45 minutes of meditation sequence with the mountain in background. While she was filming, her oxygen levels dropped. Her face paled. Pasang moved her to medical. It took 2 hours for her vitals to stabilize." He approached the leader. "She's not acclimatizing well. The filming is making it worse. She's distracted." The leader understood. The footage was exceptional. The satellite company was happy. The sponsor was happy. The only person with a problem was the person trying to keep her alive. The leader said he talked to her. Cassidy's response was gracious and public. "I totally understand. Safety first." Then she went back to her tent, edited her footage, and uploaded it via SatFi. 2 hours later, the video had 47,000 likes. The algorithm had spoken. The mountain was secondary. Pasang stopped raising concerns. He'd learned the politics. By April 23rd, the weather was favorable. Summit window opening. The camp made the call. She left Camp 4 at 11 p.m. on April 24th with Pasang and 2 other climbers. They moved reasonably fast. By dawn, they were on the upper northeast ridge. By noon, they were approaching the summit. Cassidy reached the summit at 12:34 p.m. The first thing she did was film a 360-degree video, turning in a complete circle with her phone extended. Pasang watched from behind her. He was tired. He was aware that turnaround was closing, that her standing on the summit ridge spinning in a circle was taking exactly the time they couldn't spare. He called out, "We need to move. Descent now," she said. One more angle. She stepped backward to get a different perspective. Behind her, not visible, the cornice overhung the ridge by maybe 8 feet. The cornice is snow shaped by wind into a cantilever and overhang with nothing beneath it, except a 2,000-foot vertical drop onto the Tibet side. She took one more step backward. The cornice fractured silently. Pasang saw her expression change, a moment of confusion, like her brain had sent an "I'm falling" signal, but her body hadn't registered it. She disappeared, not dramatically, just gone. Pasang moved immediately to the edge. She was visible for maybe 30 feet of the drop, tumbling against snow. Then the surface curved away and he couldn't see her anymore. He keyed the radio. "Cassidy has fallen, cornice collapsed, she's gone." The search that followed was ceremonial. Her body wasn't recoverable from the Tibet side without permissions neither country wanted to grant. She stayed on the mountain. What did get recovered was her phone. The final video was still queued in the app, ready to post, waiting for a SatFi connection. 2 hours later, when a climber reached base camp with the phone, the video was manually uploaded. It got 127,000 likes in the first 12 hours. Basang didn't climb again for 2 years. He couldn't. The guilt had. His son's surgery was postponed. His wife had to find work. When he did finally return to guiding, he was different, stricter, more conservative, climbers complained. He wouldn't let us summit, overly cautious. What he actually was someone who'd watched the algorithm kill someone and decided that no video was worth the weight of that memory. 2 years later, on the same mountain, a different kind of arrogance would show its face. This time, it wasn't about content. It was about entitlement, pure and simple.